Hey guys! Tonight we slip into the dusty, starlit streets of ancient Uruk, where the air hums with the faint clink of clay jars and the earthy tang of fermenting barley. Picture yourself barefoot on warm dirt, a crescent moon hanging low, as shadowy figures hunch over vats, stirring something that smells like bread gone rogue. This is Mesopotamia, 3000 BCE, and you're about to learn how these folks turned grain into beer under the stars. Spoiler: you probably wouldn't survive a week here. Between the scorching days and the dubious hygiene, your modern stomach would stage a revolt. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in Uruk, one of the world's first cities, its mud brick walls glowing faintly under a sky so clear it feels like you could pluck the stars. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers gurgle nearby, feeding the fields that make this place tick. Beer isn't just a drink here, it's practically currency, a gift to the gods, and the glue of every social gathering. Historians say Sumerians drank it daily, men, women, even kids, because clean water was a gamble, and beer was safer. You watch a brewer, his hands caked in grain dust, pour barley mash into a wide clay vat. He's not just making a beverage, he's crafting survival. The process starts with barley, the backbone of Mesopotamian life. You squat beside a pile of it, feeling the rough grains between your fingers. It's been soaked, sprouted, and dried into malt, a trick the Sumerians perfected long before anyone wrote down the recipe. The brewer mutters something about Ninkasi, the goddess of beer, as he stirs. A quirky tidbit: some clay tablets suggest they let the mash sit out, hoping wild yeasts would kickstart fermentation. Imagine trusting desert air to do your chemistry. Historians still argue whether this was genius or just blind luck. Either way, it worked. You inhale the sour, bready scent wafting from the vat. It's not exactly craft IPA, more like a thick, chewy sludge you'd need a straw to drink. Speaking of straws, you spot a bundle of reeds nearby, cut for sipping. The brewer chuckles at your puzzled face, probably thinking you're some time-traveling lightweight. Joke number 1. If you tried chugging this stuff, you'd be napping under a palm tree before the moon moved an inch. The vat bubbles faintly, and you realize this beer is alive, fizzing with yeasts that no one here understands but everyone trusts. As you watch, the brewer adds water from a goatskin, his movements slow and deliberate, like he's conducting a ritual. The stars overhead seem to pulse in rhythm with his stirring. You can't help but feel the weight of this moment. Humans have been brewing for millennia, but here, it's raw, elemental. Another joke: if your local bar served Sumerian beer, you'd demand a refund and a toothbrush. Yet this murky brew binds the city together, from laborers to priests. You glance at the brewer's calloused hands, wondering how many vats he's stirred under these same stars. The night feels endless, the air warm and still, and you're already sinking deeper into Uruk's rhythm. You're still in Uruk, the starlight casting long shadows across the dirt-packed ground, but now you're knee-deep in a different task. Digging clay from a riverbank under the moon's pale glow. The air is thick with the damp, mineral scent of the Tigris, and your hands are slick with mud as you scoop the sticky earth into a basket. This isn't just any dirt, it's the raw stuff of Sumerian brewing pots, the vessels that hold the magic of beer. The brewer from last night, his face weathered like old leather, nods at you to keep going. You're learning the first step of making those vats, and trust me, it's as unglamorous as it sounds. The clay here is special, pulled from riverbeds where the Tigris and Euphrates meet. Historians note that Sumerians prized this stuff for its durability. Once fired, these pots could handle the heat and weight of fermenting mash without cracking. You trudge through the shallows, your toes sinking into the cool sludge, and heft another load. The moon reflects off the water, turning the ripples silver, and you can't help but feel like you're part of something ancient. A quirky tidbit. Some archaeologists found pots with beer residue so old it's basically fossilized party juice. Proof these vessels lasted centuries. You carry your basket to a potter's workshop, a low mud brick hut glowing with the flicker of an oil lamp. The potter, a woman with deft hands, shows you how to knead the clay, picking out stray pebbles that could ruin a pot. She smirks at your clumsy efforts. Joke number 1. Your pot looks more like a sad pancake than a brewing vat. Historians still argue whether potters were specialized artisans or just multitasking farmers. Either way, this woman's skill is mesmerizing. Her fingers shape the clay into wide, shallow forms, perfect for mixing barley and water under the stars. As you watch, she explains, through gestures, since your Sumerian is rusty, that the pots need thick walls to keep the mash from leaking. You try your hand at shaping one, but the clay collapses under your touch. The potter laughs, tossing you a lump to try again. The night air is warm, carrying the faint hum of crickets and the distant murmur of the city. You notice the potter's tools, simple wooden paddles and smooth stones, but they're enough to craft something vital. Joke number 2. If IKEA sold Sumerian brewing kits, you'd still mess it up. The mainstream fact hits you as you knead the clay. These pots weren't just for beer. They stored grain, held offerings for temples, even doubled as cooking vessels. Beer was so central that every household had at least one brewing pot, often passed down like a family heirloom. You glance at the starry sky, remembering the brewer's vats from last night. Those pots started here, in this hut, shaped by hands like these. The potter hums softly, her tune blending with the night's quiet pulse, and you feel the weight of her work. Every vat she makes will hold a piece of Uruk's soul. You're covered in clay now, your arms aching, but there's a rhythm to it. The potter points to a stack of finished pots, their surfaces smoothed and ready for the kiln. You imagine them filled with bubbling mash, sitting under the same moon that's watching you now. Joke number 3. You're so bad at this, they might hire you to make ceremonial potholes instead. The workshop feels like a time capsule, linking you to the brewers waiting back in the city. You wipe the mud from your hands, ready to carry this clay's story forward. You're back in Uruk, the night air heavy with the scent of dust and distant rivers, but now you're hunched over a stone quern, grinding barley under the faint glow of a crescent moon. Your hands ache as you push the heavy stone back and forth, turning golden grains into coarse flour. The brewer from that starlit vat, his tunic dusted with chaff, watches you with a mix of amusement and pity. This is the heart of Mesopotamian beer making, barley, the crop that fuels both bellies and brews. You're learning why it's the lifeblood of this city, and spoiler, it's not as easy as grabbing a bag from the supermarket. Barley thrives here, thanks to the Tigris and Euphrates flooding just right to irrigate the fields. Historians say it was so vital that Sumerians measured wealth in barley bushels. Forget gold, this was their real treasure. You pour another handful onto the quern, feeling the grains crunch under the stone. The process is slow, meditative, and your arms are screaming already. A quirky tidbit. Some tablets describe barley rations for workers, but brewers got extra because their beer kept the city happy. You glance at the brewer, wondering if he's hoarding his stash. The quern's rhythm is hypnotic, each grind releasing a nutty aroma that mixes with the cool night breeze. You imagine fields stretching beyond Uruk, rows of barley swaying under the stars. Joke number 1. If you had to grind all the city's barley, you'd be buff but begging for a robot. Historians still argue whether barley was first domesticated for bread or beer. Some say the buzz of a good brew tipped the scales. Either way, you're grinding the stuff that makes both possible. You pause to wipe sweat from your brow, and the brewer hands you a clay cup of water, warm, but you're grateful. He points to a pile of malted barley, already sprouted and dried, ready for brewing. You scoop some up, noticing its slightly sweet smell, like damp grass. This is the magic ingredient, the one that turns flour into fermentable mash. You try to ask how they figured out malting, but the brewer just shrugs, as if it's as old as the stars. Joke number 2. You'd probably invent soggy cereal instead of beer. The mainstream fact lands as you grind. Barley wasn't just food, it was a social engine. Temples stored it, kings taxed it, and brewers like this guy turned it into beer that fueled festivals and friendships. You look at the growing pile of flour, your hands dusted white, and feel a connection to the farmers who planted this crop. The quern keeps moving, its scrape blending with the night's quiet hum, crickets, a distant dog barking, the rustle of palm fronds. You're starting to get why this grain is sacred here. The brewer claps you on the shoulder, pointing to a basket where you dump your flour. It's not much, but it's enough to make a small batch of mash. You think back to the clay pots from that potter's hut, waiting to hold this very grain. Joke number 3. Your grinding skills are so bad, they'd use your flour for mortar instead. The stars overhead seem to wink, as if they've seen countless nights like this, countless hands turning barley into something more. You're tired, but the brewer's quiet pride keeps you going, tying you deeper to Uruk's starlit pulse. You're still in Uruk, the night wrapping you in a warm, starry blanket, but now you're crouched beside a wide clay vat, stirring a lumpy mash that smells like warm bread and ambition. The brewer, his eyes glinting in the moonlight, hands you a wooden paddle and motions for you to keep the mixture moving. Above, the stars seem to hum, and you're chanting softly, words you barely understand, to Ninkasi, the Sumerian goddess of beer. This isn't just cooking, it's a sacred ritual, and you're neck deep in it, hoping you don't mess up her divine recipe. Ninkasi's hymn, etched on clay tablets around 1800 BCE, is a mainstream gem historians love. It's basically the world's oldest beer recipe, doubling as a prayer. You murmur lines about barley and honey, your voice blending with the brewer's low chant. The words feel heavy, like they carry the weight of every brew made under these stars. A quirky tidbit. Some scholars think the hymn was sung to time the brewing steps. Imagine a divine jingle to keep you from burning the mash. You stir faster, feeling the rhythm of the song in your arms. The vat's contents are sticky, a mix of malted barley, water, and something the brewer calls bapayar, a fermented bread he crumbled in earlier. You lean closer, catching a sour whiff that makes your nose wrinkle. Joke number 1. If this was on a menu today, you'd send it back with a polite, "Needs more, not this." Historians still argue whether Ninkasi was a real priestess turned goddess or just a myth brewed up by thirsty poets. Either way, her name hangs over every vat in Uruk. You keep stirring, your shoulders burning, as the brewer tosses in a handful of dates for sweetness. The mash gurgles, alive with wild yeasts from the air, and you can't help but marvel at the alchemy. The stars overhead pulse, as if Ninkasi herself is watching. You think back to the barley you ground last night, now transformed into this bubbling mess. The brewer nods approval, but his smirk says you're still a rookie. Joke number 2. You're so bad at chanting, Ninkasi might smite you with flat beer. The mainstream fact sinks in. Beer was sacred here, not just a drink but a gift to the gods. Temples brewed it, priests sipped it, and every batch carried a prayer. You glance at the vat, its surface catching the moonlight, and feel the weight of that connection. The chant loops again, and you're starting to get the hang of it, your voice softer now, blending with the night's hum. Crickets, a faint breeze, the slosh of the paddle. The brewer hums along, his hands steady as he checks the mash's texture. You're fully in the moment, the stars above tying you to the countless brewers who've sung to Ninkasi before. The vat feels like a portal, linking you to the potter's clay, the barley fields, the river's pulse. Joke number 3. If you brewed this solo, you'd end up with soup and a divine cease and desist. The brewer claps your shoulder, signaling a break, and you lean back, paddle still in hand. The mash keeps bubbling, the chant fading into the night, and you're ready for whatever Ninkasi's got next. You're still in Uruk, the night air thick with the scent of fermenting mash and desert dust, crouched beside a cluster of clay jars glowing faintly under the starlight. The brewer, his face etched with focus, hands you a reed to poke at the bubbling brew inside one. You're guarding these jars by firelight now, keeping the fermentation on track while dodging curious critters scuttling in the dark. The stars above twinkle like they're in on the secret, and you're learning that brewing beer is as much about patience as it is about alchemy. Fermentation was a mystery to Sumerians, but historians confirm they nailed it, letting wild yeasts work their magic in open jars. You peer into one, watching the frothy surface churn like a tiny storm. The brew smells sharp, almost vinegary, and you're half convinced it's plotting to escape. A quirky tidbit. Some tablets mention brewers burning herbs to ward off bad spirits during fermentation. Whether that meant bugs or bad luck, no one's sure. You wave away a moth, wondering if you should start burning sage yourself. The firelight dances on the jars, casting shadows that make the whole scene feel like a ritual. You shift your weight, your legs cramped from squatting, and the brewer chuckles at your discomfort. Joke number 1. You're so bad at this, they'd hire a scorpion to guard the jars instead. Historians still argue whether Sumerians knew yeasts were alive or just thought Ninkasi was flexing her divine muscles. Either way, you're keeping watch, poking the brew to check its progress, the reed sticky in your hand. You think back to the Ninkasi hymn you chanted last night, its rhythm still echoing in your head. That mash is now this brew, transforming under the stars. The brewer tosses a log on the fire, sending sparks skyward, and shows you how to seal a jar with a clay lid to slow the fermentation. You try it, but the lid slips, earning you a raised eyebrow. Joke number 2. Your sealing skills are so rough, you'd let the whole batch turn to vinegar. The mainstream fact hits you. Beer was a daily staple, not a luxury. Everyone drank it, laborers, priests, even kids, because it was safer than river water crawling with who knows what. You glance at the jars, their surfaces beating with condensation, and feel the weight of that reality. The night's quiet hum surrounds you, crickets, the crackle of the fire, a distant owl hooting. You poke another jar, the brew hissing softly, and the brewer nods, satisfied. You're starting to get the hang of this, even if your back's begging for a break. A rustle in the dark makes you jump, a rat, probably eyeing your brew. You shoo it away, clutching your reed like a tiny spear. Joke number 3. You're so jumpy, you'd fight a mouse and lose. The brewer laughs, handing you a sip of an older batch through a straw. It's thick, gritty, and tastes like sour bread, but under these stars, it's weirdly perfect. You lean back, the fire's warmth on your face, the jars bubbling like they're whispering secrets. You're tied to the clay pots, the barley, the hymn, all under Uruk's endless sky. You're still in Uruk, the starry night folding around you like a soft blanket, but now you're sprawled on a reed mat in a bustling tavern, clutching a clay cup and a long, hollow reed. The air hums with low voices, the clink of jars, and the sour tang of beer. You're sipping this thick, gritty brew through the reed, trying not to grimace as it hits your tongue. It's like drinking liquid bread with a side of attitude. The brewer's gone, but a tavern keeper with a sly grin watches you, ready to pour more. You're here to hear stories, the kind that flow when beer does, under Uruk's endless sky. Sumerian taverns were social hubs, historians say, where everyone from traders to scribes swapped tales over beer. You lean closer to a group of laborers, their hands dusty from a day at the ziggurat, as one spins a yarn about a merchant outwitted by a cunning goat. The reed in your cup keeps the sediment at bay, barely, and you're grateful for it. A quirky tidbit. Some tablets describe taverns serving beer in communal jars, with everyone slurping through their own reeds like it's a prehistoric straw party. You adjust your grip, hoping you look less awkward than you feel. The tavern's walls, mud brick and smoky, flicker in the glow of oil lamps. You sip again, the brew's sour kick making your eyes water. Joke number 1. This stuff's so strong, you'd confess your secrets to a palm tree. Historians still argue whether taverns were respectable or borderline chaotic. Some say they doubled as brothels. Others insist they were just cozy pubs. Either way, the stories here are gold. A trader brags about dodging bandits. A poet mumbles about Ninkasi's grace, and you're soaking it all in. You think back to the fermenting jars you guarded last night, their bubbles now this cloudy drink. The tavern keeper refills your cup, smirking at your cautious sips. You spot a woman across the room, her laughter cutting through the hum, telling a tale about a river spirit who loves beer. You're half convinced she's making it up, but the crowd eats it up. Joke number 2. You try telling a story, but your Sumerian's so bad, they think you're reciting a grocery list. The mainstream fact lands. Beer wasn't just a drink, it was a social glue. It fueled gossip, deals, even poetry, binding Uruk's people in ways water never could. You sip again, the reed scraping the cup's bottom, and feel the tavern's pulse. Laughter, arguments, a drunk guy snoring in the corner. The night's sounds wrap around you, crickets outside, the clatter of cups, a faint lute strumming. You lean back, the mat creaking, and catch another story about a king who paid his army in beer. You're starting to love this place, sediment and all. A kid darts through, dodging legs to deliver a jar to another table. You marvel at how everyone's here, old, young, rich, poor, united by this brew. Joke number 3. You're so clumsy with the reed, you'd start a tavern-wide spit take. The tavern keeper winks, offering you a fresh straw, and you take it, ready for more tales. The stars outside keep watch, tying you to the clay, the barley, the firelit jars. You're sinking deeper into Urik's stories, the beer loosening your thoughts as the night hums on. You're still in Urik, the starry night soft and warm, but now you're trailing a brewer through the pre-dawn streets, your sandals slapping against packed dirt. The air carries the faint scent of barley and smoke, and the brewer, a wiry man with a perpetual squint, moves like he's done this 1,000 times. You're shadowing his daily grind, from dawn to dusk, as he weaves through Urik's mud brick maze to keep the city's beer flowing. The stars are fading, a pink glow creeping over the horizon, and you're already wondering how he survives this hustle. Historians note that brewing was a full-time gig in Sumer, often tied to temples or big households. You follow the brewer to a courtyard where he checks a stack of clay jars, his hands brushing over their sealed lids. He mutters about yesterday's batch, the one you guarded by firelight, and you feel a flicker of pride. A quirky tidbit. Some brewers doubled as bookkeepers, scratching beer tallies on tablets. Imagine balancing spreadsheets while stirring mash. You watch him inspect a jar, his focus sharp despite the early hour. The courtyard hums with activity. Women knead bapayar bread, kids haul water from a canal. You help carry a basket of malted barley, your arms screaming under the weight. Joke number 1. You're so slow, they'd trade you for a particularly motivated donkey. Historians still argue whether brewers were elite artisans or just glorified cooks. Some say their temple ties gave them clout. Either way, this guy's day is packed, grinding grain, mixing mash, firing pots, and dodging cranky priests. You trail him to a brewing hut, where he stirs a vat of mash under the rising sun. The heat's already creeping in, and sweat beads on your forehead. He shows you how to check the mash's texture, his calloused fingers testing its stickiness. You try, but your hands fumble, earning a grunt. Joke number 2. Your brewing skills are so bad, Ninkasi's probably filing a complaint. You think back to the tavern stories last night, how this brewer's beer fueled those laughs and tales. The mainstream fact hits. Brewing wasn't just labor, it was Urik's heartbeat. Beer paid workers, pleased gods, and kept the social wheels turning. You watch the brewer haul a finished batch to a cart, bound for a temple. The city's waking now. Merchants shout, goats bleat, a kid chases a stray dog. The brewer doesn't stop, moving to knead more bapayar, his hands never idle. You're exhausted just watching, the day's heat sinking into your bones, but his quiet focus pulls you along. By dusk, You're back in the courtyard, the sky bruising purple. The brewer finally sits, sipping a cup of his own brew through a reed. You join him, the beer's sour bite familiar now. Joke number 3. You're so tired, you'd nap in a vat if they let you. The night's hum returns. Crickets, a distant flute, the slosh of jars. You're tied to the clay pots, the barley fields, the tavern's buzz, all through this man's endless day. The stars peek out, and you're ready for whatever's next in Uruk's rhythm. You're still in Uruk, the night air warm and gritty with desert dust, but now you're trudging along a sun-baked road, your shoulders aching under the weight of a clay amphora sloshing with beer. The stars are just peeking out, casting a faint glow on the path, and you're part of a small caravan hauling brews to a nearby settlement. The brewer's cousin, a wiry trader with a gap-toothed grin, leads the way, his donkey plodding ahead. You're learning how beer moves through Sumer's trade routes, tying cities together under the vast Mesopotamian sky. Historians say beer was a major trade good in Sumer, often swapped for grain, wool, or even silver. You adjust the amphora's strap, its rough clay digging into your skin, and marvel at how this sour brew is worth the sweat. A quirky tidbit. Some traders sealed their jars with clay stamps, like ancient barcodes, to prove the beer came from a trusted brewer. You check your amphora's seal, a crude star-shaped mark, and hope it doesn't crack before you reach the next town. The road stretches through barley fields, their stalks swaying in the evening breeze. You hear the trader hum a tune, probably to keep the donkey moving. Joke number 1. Your carrying skills are so shaky, you'd spill Ninkasi's finest and start a riot. Historians still argue whether beer trade fueled Uruk's growth or just kept taverns stocked. Some say it was both. You glance at the other porters, their faces shadowed but focused, each lugging their own jar like it's a sacred duty. You think back to the brewer's courtyard from last night, where these amphorae were filled. The trader points to a distant glow, your destination, a village with thirsty locals. You shift the jar, your arms screaming, and notice a faint leak. Panic spikes, but the trader laughs, saying a little spill's normal. Joke number 2. You're so clumsy, they'd name a new beer after your leaks. Ode to fumble. The stars above seem to wink, as if they've seen countless caravans like this. The mainstream fact lands. Beer wasn't just drunk, it was a currency that powered Sumer's economy. Temples traded it, kings taxed it, and traders like this guy carried it far beyond Uruk's walls. The road's rhythm, crunching sandals, the donkey snorts, a porter's low curse, blends with the night's hum. You pass a roadside shrine, a tiny clay Ninkasi statue, and the trader tosses a pebble as an offering. You're tempted to ask for divine strength, but your pride keeps you quiet. The village lights grow closer, and you imagine the tavern waiting, full of stories like the ones you heard before. Joke number 3. If you drop this jar, you'd be banned from every tavern in Mesopotamia. The trader claps your back, urging you to keep up, and you grit your teeth, the amphora heavy but steady. You're tied to the clay pots, the barley, the brewer's grind, all moving under the stars. The road feels endless, but the promise of rest, and maybe a sip, keeps you going. You're still in Uruk, the night sky a glittering dome above the city's mud brick sprawl, but now you're standing in the shadow of a towering ziggurat, its steps climbing toward the stars. The air hums with the scent of incense and barley, and you're clutching a clay jug of beer, your hands sweaty as you prepare to offer it to the gods. A priest, his robe embroidered with crescent moons, gestures for you to follow him up a narrow path. You're learning how beer weaves into Sumerian worship, a sacred act under the watchful eyes of Ninkasi and her divine crew. Historians confirm that beer was a key offering in Sumerian temples, poured for gods like Inanna and Enlil to ensure blessings. You climb the ziggurat's steps, the jug heavy in your arms, and feel the weight of this ritual. The priest murmurs a prayer, his voice blending with the night's breeze. A quirky tidbit. Some tablets describe priests sipping the god's share after offerings. Guess even holy folks couldn't resist a good brew. You glance at the jug, wondering if Ninkasi would mind a tiny taste. The ziggurat's platform is alive with flickering oil lamps, their light dancing on clay altars. You pour the beer into a shallow basin, its sour aroma mixing with myrrh. Joke number 1. You're so nervous, you'd spill Ninkasi's beer and get smote by a divine bar tab. Historians still argue whether these offerings were purely symbolic or if priests used them to fund temple feasts. Either way, the act feels electric, like you're plugging into Uruk's spiritual grid. You think back to the trade caravan last night, those amphorae destined for places like this. The priest chants louder, naming Ninkasi, and you echo him, your voice wobbly but earnest. The beer glints in the lamplight, a liquid bridge to the heavens. You're half expecting a thunderclap, but the stars just shine, calm and steady. Joke number 2. You're chanting so off-key, the gods might demand a refund on their beer. The mainstream fact sinks in. Temples were beer hubs, brewing and storing vast quantities to honor the divine and feed worshippers. You watch the priest sprinkle barley over the altar, tying the offering to the fields you saw days ago. The night's sounds, crickets, a distant drum, the rustle of robes, wrap around you, grounding you in this moment. You set the jug down, your hands tingling, and the priest nods, satisfied. You're starting to feel the rhythm of this sacred work, even if your knees wobble from the climb. A breeze sweeps the platform, carrying the beer's scent skyward. You imagine Ninkasi smiling, or at least not rolling her eyes. Joke number 3. You're so clumsy, you'd trip on a ziggurat step and start a new myth. The priest leads you back down, the city sprawling below like a map of flickering lights. You're tied to the clay pots, the barley, the tavern tales, all flowing into this offering. The stars pulse above, and you're ready for whatever Uruk's gods have next. You're still in Uruk, the night air warm and buzzing with the distant hum of celebration, but now you're weaving through a crowded palace courtyard, balancing a clay jug of beer in your trembling hands. Torches cast flickering shadows on mud brick walls, and the scent of roasted meat and barley fills the air. You're serving brews at a royal feast, where a king, his beard braided with gold, holds court under the stars. The brewer's cousin, now your guide, nudges you to keep moving, warning you not to spill. You're learning how beer fuels Sumerian splendor, and one wrong step could land you in hot water. Historians say royal feasts were massive, with beer flowing like rivers to impress guests and honor allies. You dodge a tipsy noble, his tunic stained with sauce, and pour beer into a cup for a stern-faced scribe. The jug's heavier than it looks, and your arms are screaming. A quirky tidbit. Some tablets brag about kings serving red beer, possibly flavored with pomegranate, fancy for 3000 BCE. You sniff your jug, hoping it's not the basic stuff, but it smells like the same sour brew you sipped in the tavern. The courtyard is a chaos of laughter, music, and clinking cups. You spot dancers twirling to a lute's wail, their anklets jingling. Joke number 1. You're so nervous, you'd pour beer on the king's lap and spark a diplomatic crisis. Historians still argue whether these feasts were pure politics or just epic parties, likely both, given the vats being drained tonight. You think back to the ziggurat offering last night, same beer, different vibe. Here, it's less about gods and more about showing off. You refill another cup, the reed straws bobbing as guests sip. A woman in a fringed shawl grabs your jug, pouring her own with a wink. You're half relieved, half terrified she'll rat you out for slacking. The king raises his cup, toasting some victory, and the crowd roars. Joke number 2. Your serving skills are so bad, they'd demote you to cleaning the royal donkey pens. The beer's sour tang mixes with the night's heat, and you're starting to feel the feast's pulse, wild, loud, alive. The mainstream fact hits. Beer was a status symbol at these feasts, with kings flaunting their brewery's output to flex wealth. You glance at the vats lining the courtyard, each guarded by a servant fiercer than the last. The night's sounds, drums, shouts, a stray goat bleating, blend into a dizzying hum. You weave through the crowd, your jug lighter now, and spot the brewer's cousin grinning from a corner. He's probably betting on whether you'll trip. You're tied to the clay pots, the trade routes, the temple's prayers, all pouring into this chaotic night. A dancer bumps you, and you nearly drop the jug, catching it just in time. The crowd doesn't notice, too busy toasting. Joke number 3. You're so clumsy, you'd turn this feast into a beer-soaked slip and slide. The cousin claps your shoulder, handing you a sip of the good stuff. It's still gritty, but under these stars, it's royal. You lean against a wall, the feast swirling around you, the king's laughter echoing. The night feels endless, and you're ready for whatever this palace throws next. You're still in Uruk, the night sky a velvet canopy speckled with stars, but now you're in a bustling brewing hut, the air thick with the steamy scent of barley mash and wood smoke. You're standing beside a woman, her hands deftly stirring a bubbling vat, her face lit by the glow of a small fire. She's one of Uruk's brew masters, and you're here to learn how women ran the beer scene in Sumer, their skill shaping the city's soul. The hum of the night, crickets, a distant cart creaking, mixes with the slosh of her paddle, and you're trying not to gawk at her quiet authority. Historians confirm women were central to Sumerian brewing, often overseeing production in temples and households. You watch her adjust the fire, her movements precise, as she mutters a prayer to Ninkasi. She's not just a brewer, she's a keeper of tradition, her vats feeding everyone from priests to laborers. A quirky tidbit. Some clay tablets name women as tavern owners, doling out beer and shade to rowdy patrons. Imagine her running a bar and shutting down drunks with a single glare. You hand her a basket of malted barley, hoping you don't fumble. The hut's walls are lined with jars, their clay gleaming in the firelight. You try stirring the vat, but your paddle work is sloppy, earning a smirk. Joke number 1. You're so bad at this, she'd hire a goat to stir instead. Historians still argue whether women brewers held high status or were just stuck with grunt work. Some say their temple roles gave them real clout. You think back to the royal feast last night. Her beer was probably in those jugs, fueling the king's toasts. She shows you how to crumble bapayar bread into the mash, her hands steady as she explains its sour kick. You try, but your crumbs are uneven, and she laughs, tossing in a handful of dates for sweetness. The steam makes your face glow, and the hut feels like a time capsule, tying you to the clay pots and trade routes. Joke number 2. Your brewing's so rough, Ninkasi's sending you to remedial goddess school. The mainstream fact lands. Women didn't just brew, they were economic players, their beer traded, taxed, and offered to gods. You glance at her, her focus unbroken as she checks the mash's texture. A younger woman, maybe her daughter, hauls water in, nodding at you like you're part of the crew. The night's rhythm, fire crackling, mash bubbling, a soft chant, pulls you deeper. You're starting to get why her work matters, why her vats are Uruk's heartbeat. She hands you a reed to sip a finished batch. It's thick, gritty, but hers tastes smoother than the tavern's. Joke number 3. You're so clumsy with the reed, you'd drown in beer before tasting it. The hut's warmth wraps you, the stars outside peeking through a narrow window. You're tied to the barley fields, the ziggurats' offerings, the feast's chaos, all through her hands. She hums a tune, maybe Ninkasi's hymn, and you feel the weight of her legacy. The vat bubbles on, and you're ready for whatever she teaches next under Uruk's endless sky. You're still in Uruk, the night sky a deep indigo flecked with stars, but now you're hunched over a stack of clay tablets in a dimly lit scribe's room, the air thick with the scent of dust and dried reeds. A scribe, his fingers stained with ink, hands you a stylus and points to a tablet etched with wedge-shaped marks. You're deciphering Sumerian laws about beer, rules that govern every jar you've seen, from the brewer's vats to the king's feast. The night hums softly, crickets, a faint wind, the scratch of styluses, and you're learning how Uruk's beer was bound by strict codes under these stars. Historians highlight the Code of Hammurabi, from a later Mesopotamian era, which includes beer laws, but Sumerian tablets show even earlier regulations. You squint at the cuneiform, tracing lines about tavern taxes and brew quality. The scribe grunts, correcting your grip on the stylus. A quirky tidbit. Some laws find brewers for watering down beer. Imagine a Sumerian Yelp review calling out, "Dishonest ale." You smirk, picturing the tavern keeper you met dodging a clay tablet thrown by an angry customer. The tablet details penalties. A brewer caught skimping on barley could owe silver or face a dunk in the river. You try scratching a note, but your cuneiform looks like a toddler's doodle. Joke number 1. You're so bad at this, they'd ban you from writing grocery lists. Historians still argue whether these laws protected consumers or just padded temple coffers, likely both, given Uruk's love for beer and bureaucracy. You think back to the women brewers last night. Their vats were probably inspected under these same rules. The scribe points to another tablet, listing beer rations for workers. Laborers got 2 liters a day, priests more. You marvel at how beer was woven into every contract, every paycheck. The room's oil lamp flickers, casting shadows on the tablets, and you feel the weight of this system. Joke number 2. Your tablet skills are so rough, you'd accidentally outlaw beer and start a riot. The mainstream fact hits. Beer laws weren't just rules, they stabilized Uruk's economy, ensuring fair trade and happy drinkers. You lean back, your eyes stinging from the lamp's smoke, and the scribe hands you a cup of beer. Standard scribe perk, apparently. You sip through a reed, the familiar sour bite grounding you. The night's rhythm, scribbling styluses, a distant dog barking, pulls you deeper. You're starting to see how these tablets tied the city together, from barley fields to temple offerings. Joke number 3. You're so slow at reading cuneiform, they'd hire a pigeon to deliver the laws instead. The scribe smirks, pointing to another tablet, and you dive back in, tied to the clay pots, the trade routes, the brewer's hustle, all under Uruk's starry dome. You're still in Uruk, the night sky a vast canvas of twinkling stars, but now you're in a quiet healer's hut, the air heavy with the scent of herbs and fermenting beer. You're kneeling beside a woman, her hands steady as she mixes a clay bowl of brew with crushed plants, her eyes sharp in the flicker of an oil lamp. She's a Sumerian healer, and you're learning how beer doubled as medicine, soothing ailments under the same stars that watched you haul amphorae. The night hums softly. Crickets, a faint breeze, the bubble of a nearby vat, and you're trying not to sneeze from the pungent mix. Historians confirm Sumerians used beer as a base for medicinal concoctions, blending it with herbs like myrrh or licorice to treat everything from fevers to toothaches. You hand the healer a sprig of something that smells like regret, and she grinds it into the brew. The bowl's contents look like swamp water, but she's unfazed. A quirky tidbit. Some tablets describe beer-based eye salves that probably stung more than they helped. Imagine DIY optometry gone wrong. You wince, glad you're not her patient tonight. The hut's shelves are crammed with jars, some holding dried leaves, others beer ready for mixing. You stir the bowl, your wrist aching, and the healer corrects your speed with a click of her tongue. Joke number 1. You're so bad at this, she'd prescribe you a nap instead of her brew. Historians still argue whether these remedies worked or were just placebo. Some say the alcohol at least dulled the pain. You think back to the clay tablets from last night. Those laws probably governed her brews too, ensuring no one got a bad batch. She dips a reed into the mixture, tasting it, then nods for you to try. It's bitter, like chewing a forest, but you swallow, hoping it's not a laxative. The healer chants softly, maybe invoking Ninkasi or a healing god, and you join in, your voice wobbly. The mainstream fact lands. Beer wasn't just a drink or currency, it was a pharmacy, trusted to ease Urik's aches and fevers. The night's rhythm, herbs rustling, the lamp's hiss, a distant owl, wraps you, tying you to the barley fields, the brewer's grind, the temple's prayers. You watch her pour the mix into a small jar, sealing it for a patient. Her hands move with the same precision you saw in the women brewers, and you realize how deep this craft runs. Joke number 2. Your mixing's so sloppy, you'd turn her medicine into a new kind of poison. She hands you another herb to grind, and you fumble, scattering leaves. She laughs, her eyes kind, and you're starting to feel the weight of her work, saving lives with beer and a prayer. The hut feels like a sanctuary, the stars outside peeking through a reed curtain. Joke number 3. You're so clumsy, she'd ban you from her hut before you cure a single cricket. The healer hums, her chant fading into the night, and you're tied to every vat, every story, every law you've seen. The bowl's empty now, but its purpose lingers, and you're ready for whatever Urik's stars reveal next. You're still in Urik, the night sky a shimmering quilt of stars, but now you're weaving through the city's bustling market, the air alive with the clamor of bartering and the sharp scent of spilled beer. You're clutching a clay tablet, scratching tallies with a stylus as you track the flow of brews through Urik's economic heart. A merchant, his tunic dusted with barley chaff, haggles nearby, trading jars of beer for wool. You're learning how beer sparked wealth under these stars, tying every corner of the city to its sour, gritty pulse. The night hums, shouts, cartwheels creaking, a stray goat bleating, and you're trying not to smudge your tablet. Historians say beer was a cornerstone of Sumer's economy, used as currency, wages, and trade goods. You watch a brewer swap a jug for a basket of dates, her grin wide as she seals the deal. Your tablet lists transactions. 2 liters for laborer, 10 for a priest, and you're sweating to keep up. A quirky tidbit. Some markets had beer inspectors who tasted batches to catch cheats. Imagine a Sumerian health department with straws. You smirk, picturing the tavern keeper you met dodging a sour review. The market's chaos is hypnotic. Vendors hawk fish, potters stack clay jars, kids dart through with stolen figs. You tally another sale, your stylus slipping, and the merchant laughs at your shaky cuneiform. Joke number 1. You're so bad at this, they'd trade you for a half-drunk jar. Historians still argue whether beer drove Urich's urban boom or just greased its wheels. Some say it fueled the first cities by feeding workers. You think back to the healer's hut last night. Her medicinal brews probably started here, bartered under these stars. You spot a temple cart unloading vats, the same kind you offered at the ziggurat. The merchant points to a trader bound for a distant city, his donkeys laden with amphorae like the ones you hauled. The mainstream fact hits. Beer wasn't just a product, it was Urich's economic engine, linking farmers, brewers, and kings. You scratch another tally, the tablet heavy in your hands, and feel the city's rhythm. Vendors shouting, straws slurping, coins clinking. You're tied to the clay pots, the laws, the royal feasts, all pulsing through this market. A kid bumps you, nearly knocking your tablet, and you clutch it like a lifeline. The merchant hands you a sip of beer to steady your nerves. It's gritty but welcome. Joke number 2. Your tallying's so messy, you'd bankrupt Urich by sunrise. The night's heat presses in, but the market's energy keeps you moving. You watch a woman barter a vat for a copper bracelet, her voice sharp and confident, and marvel at how beer binds every deal. Joke number 3. You're so slow, they'd hire a turtle to tally faster. The stars wink above, and you're ready for Urich's final lesson. You're still in Urich, the night sky a vast, star-strewn tapestry, but now you're perched on a low mud brick wall at the city's edge, the cool desert breeze brushing your face. The air carries the faint tang of barley and distant fires, and you're alone, gazing at the fields where this journey began. You're reflecting on beer's mark on Sumer, how it wove through every moment you've lived here. Vats, taverns, temples, markets. The stars above seem to pulse with the city's heartbeat, and you're sinking into the quiet, letting Urich's legacy settle like dust. The night hums softly. Crickets, a far-off dog, the rustle of palm fronds, and you're ready to drift. Historians agree beer shaped Sumer's culture, from feeding workers to honoring gods, leaving traces in every clay tablet. You trace a finger in the dirt, picturing the brewer's vats, the healer's herbs, the market's clamor. Beer wasn't just a drink, it was Uruk's soul, binding people across centuries. A quirky tidbit. Some scholars say Sumerians drank beer at funerals, toasting the dead. Imagine raising a reed to Ninkasi one last time. You smile, wondering if those stars watched those toasts, too. The fields stretch dark and silent, their barley the root of every jar you've carried. You think back to the market last night, its chaotic trades fueling the city you've walked. Joke number 1. If you tried brewing now, you'd make mud soup and call it vintage. Historians still argue whether beer birthed civilization or just made it bearable. Some say it spurred writing itself, to track all those vats. You lean back, the wall's rough edge grounding you, and feel the weight of that debate under these endless stars. The mainstream fact lands. Beer's legacy outlived Uruk, its recipes and rituals echoing in every brewery today. You imagine the women brewers, the scribes' tablets, the king's feast, all tied to this moment. The night's rhythm, wind whispering, stars gleaming, feels like a lullaby, pulling you deeper. Joke number 2. You're so tired, you'd nap on a ziggurat and dream of straws. You close your eyes, the city's pulse fading, and let the stars carry you. Now, let's slow things down, ease you towards sleep under Uruk's gentle stars. Picture yourself lying on that mud brick wall, the desert air soft against your skin, the world quiet except for a faint breeze rustling the barley fields. The city's lights dim, its voices hush, and the stars grow brighter, each one a story, brewers stirring vats, traders hauling jars, healers chanting low. You're safe here, wrapped in the warmth of a night that's held Sumer for millennia. Let your breathing slow, matching the rhythm of the Tigris flowing nearby, its waters cradling the city's dreams. The beer's sour tang, the clay's cool weight, the market's hum. They're slipping away, softening into a memory as light as a reed. You don't need to hold on, the stars will keep Uruk's secrets, whispering them long after you've drifted. Feel your shoulders sink, your thoughts blur, like mash settling in a vat. The night is kind, the desert vast, and you're floating, carried by Ninkasi's hymn, its notes fading into silence. Every worry, every rush, it's gone, replaced by the calm of a city at rest. Let the stars fade, let the breeze carry you, and sink into a sleep as deep as Sumer's roots. You've walked Uruk's paths, tasted its brews, and now it's time to rest. Sweet dreams, under the same stars that watched those ancient vats bubble. Joke number 3. You're so relaxed, you'd sleep through a Sumerian festival and miss the beer. The night cradles you, and Uruk's legacy whispers, "You've earned this peace."